I want to thank you for being here and investing in yourself and this topic of branding yourself. It's critical to brand yourself and then your company because they can be one and the same. I want to give a quick second to introduce myself. My name is Karen Love. I am a recovering corporate person. I am. Okay, and I'm old enough to be able to say that. So I want you to know that I left my beloved Houston in February and moved to Hill Country. And I am in Boerne, Texas now, and getting involved in the San Antonio community, where I am learning to brand myself there as an entrepreneur. So I've been in 3 Texas cities now. I'm hoping this is my last one, Lord willing. And it's been really wonderful because while I've been in Houston, I've been observing these 3 brilliant panelists, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but I want to just tell you a little bit about them first because I've been a trained observer watching them from my perspective. Each one of them in their own right has done a marvelous job with not only branding, but becoming an icon in the city, in their own world, and then across the world. And so I'm honored to introduce you to Matt Ross. He is our guy on the panel. I've known Matt for a very, very long time, and he will give his own introduction. But I wanted to share that my experience with him was through the Chief Marketing Officer group and also the American Marketing Association, where he created some of the awards programs, and basically in his company helped others to be able to present and brand themselves. And so Matt's going to share some of his secrets in just a second. And then Hami Arrington in the center, in the bright color, of course, we put the, the bright color in the center. Hami Arrington is the owner of a digital marketing company, and I met her through a roundtable group that I was helping to facilitate. Some of you may know Brandy McDonald, and she was putting a group of women together as we do when we want a lot of wise counsel. And Hami was in that group, and then we started interacting after that. And I have to tell you, some of the things that she knows and tells me about in the reverse mentoring is just beyond. And I always want her on the speed dial because she is brilliant as well. And sitting next to somebody that's been around doing some of the same things, I will tell you that Matt and Hami are 2 people that you can really learn a lot from in branding. And then the wonderful Chantel McWilliams. That's another story. I will tell you, she came zooming into town, didn't know anybody, and before I could blink, she knew everybody, had won every award in this city, and run businesses and started in a not-for-profit at the same time. She is unbelievable. So, what I'm going to do is be quiet and let each one of them do their own introductions and their bios, and then we're going to start with questions. We're going to go for about 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and then we're going to ask you to keep your questions until, and I promise you'll get to interact with them, and then there's 10 minutes following the session that you can interact with them. Does that sound good? Yes. Fantastic. Wonderful. Okay. So who wants to go first with the bio? You're on bio.
I'm going to pass the ball to the lady.
Okay. I think that's wonderful. And she's going to catch it and you're going to shoot, right?
Shoot. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chantel McWilliams, and I am founder and CEO of SM Global Consulting, which is a philanthropic consulting company. And what our company do is make sure that you are branded in our community. I also am CEO of Infinity Cleaning Solutions, which is a commercial cleaning company here in Houston. It's all female ran, all female operated. And so, as you can see, I'm all about the females. Just like Karen mentioned, I am new to Houston. I've been in Houston about 7 years, and I absolutely love the opportunities that Houston offer. I didn't know anyone when I moved here, and I joined the Greater Houston Women Chamber of Commerce as my first organization. And from there, it was my introduction to Houston. And I got a chance to meet women like Karen and Susan Dyson, who really embrace you and help to empower your mission and your goals. And from that encouragement, I started my businesses. And in the midst of that, I was diagnosed with stage 3B breast cancer. So my life had to go for a halt for a short second. For a very short second, I was almost terminal stage, but I am here today to encourage my goals. Thank you. I learned that life is precious, and if you have something you want to do, you've always wanted to do, a burning desire, do it. You can wake up one day and it's a different day. So I look forward to speaking to everyone today and sharing some secrets and tidbits about your philanthropic brand.
Thank you, Chantel. And I also would like to say, as Chantel mentioned, Susan Dyson from the Greater Houston Women's Chamber, she's the one that tapped us on the shoulder and said, would you guys be a part of this panel? She is an instrumental person in getting people positioned well. And if you want to brand yourself, she will help you do it, that is for sure, right, Chantel? And Hami, you're a brand new member, and also Matt is on the board. He's our male on the board of the Greater Houston Women's Chamber, so there you go. Okay, Hami, it's your turn.
So really, I think you should have gone last. Sean's done. I'm Hami Arrington, co-founder of One Foot Over. We're a digital marketing agency. We work with business-to-business companies to make sure that their sales and marketing teams are working towards the same goals. Because if you've ever worked with sales and marketing teams, a lot of times that's not the case. I am fully recovered corporate person. It's been a while. So I'm new to the Greater Women's Chamber. So I guess I'm the young one here in that sense. I am the 2020 president of the Women's Masters Network, which is a fairly new organization. We used to be National Association of Women MBAs. But last year we decided to separate from the national organization and start the Women's Masters Network. We're the first chapter in the nation. We're growing into a national organization starting next year. So if you have a master's degree and interested in personal development, we are a group for you. So it's womenmastersnetwork.org. Other than that, I'm really excited to share branding and personal branding insights with you because we all live it every day.
Thank you, Mommy. Matt?
Hopefully this is fine. Yes. My name is Matt Ross, and I run Ventures Marketing Group, which is a marketing consulting and advertising sales representative firm. I moved to Houston about 30 years ago, so I'm the longest tenured one here. From New York, I married a Texan, so I knew we would wind up. And I was working for a large national agency in New York and joined one here in Houston. And my brand was basically the brand of the agency. That was the definition of who you were. You fit into the culture. When I left Ogilvy and Mather about 20 years ago to start my own firm, it became an issue about what was my brand, how do I establish my brand, and most of my clients were out of the city, so I wasn't really connected too much. So hopefully I can answer some questions about setting up that brand and the differentiation I'd like to make. I think most everybody's familiar with branding from a product standpoint. People talk about positioning and personality and all that. On a personal level, it's the same in the sense that it's about performance. Your personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. It's not what you say, it's what you do. It's how you do business, it's how you treat others, it's how you live your life, it's the values you stand for. And as a father, I would say those are the values you try to pass on to your children. So if there's a disconnect between what you say and how you live your life, how you do your business, then you don't really have a personal brand. But it can make all the difference in terms of establishing that brand. And one of the first things I did, aside from being the token male on the Greater Houston Women's Chamber, it's such a meat market. So walk in the room and everybody's staring. But I joined the American Marketing Association, where Karen and I met, and was able to take a leadership role in a number of programs, which is one definite piece of advice that I give you. If you join an organization, join it to be a part of it, not just to go to a luncheon. Take a leadership role. That's where people will learn who you are and what you stand for. And that's where you'll see all the benefits of a personal brand.
And Matt, I think you also are the founder of the Marketer of the Year with the Houston Business Journal, if I'm not mistaken, with the AMA. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to start the Marketer of the Year program for AMA and the CMO Advisory Board for the AMA. And then I chair the marketing committee for Susan at the Greater Houston Women's Chamber. So it's about the role you play and how you do it.
Well, let's get going with some more questions then. And Hami, I wanted to start with you because when we were talking about this panel, she was like, I think when you're talking about personal branding, you have to talk about really what your definition of it is and why does it matter. And so I want you to expand on that and then talk about how that really applies with your company, with not only what you do for yourself, but for others. It's really kind of a multi-level branding process.
Right, so like Matt said, it's really personal branding, and what your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. How do people talk about you when they're talking and want to introduce you to somebody, or how can you help them? So when we work with our clients and we talk about what their brand and what it means to be in the marketplace, we look at everybody else first, see the competitors, see where they're putting themselves, where are they placing themselves, and then see where there's a gap, and where can you fill that gap. And in the same way, with your personal brand, you can do the same thing. You would, and we'll talk about in a little bit, some exercises on how to establish this and how to decide what your actual brand is, because what you say your brand is may not match up with what people say when you're not in the room, right? You really want to get a gauge of that. So I think that's it.
I think that's good. And when you're talking about your personal brand, Chantel, I mean, you've had a lot of different transitions and different things that you've been involved in, but there must be some consistent traits that you would recommend that you've noticed and others that you also were protecting while people are watching you.
Thank you, Karen. One of the traits that I always live by is being very authentic, right? People want to know who you are individually. They don't want to know all the fluff. If you just be yourself and just have a very authentic conversation and build a relationship based on that, that is the proper way to build a brand and to network. Because when you leave the room, someone always says something positive when you're being yourself. So I think it's very important to just be very authentic, be yourself, and show your personality. And when you're networking and trying to build your brand with someone else and collaborate, you never want to go into a situation with what you can gain from it. You want to always say, how can I help you? How can I support you? And be authentic and be consistent. And when you do that, people will like you, they'll want to do business with you, and they will support you.
So thank you, Chantel. But I was wondering, when you came to town and knew and didn't know anybody, did you have a strategic plan that you did to do that? Did you sit down and go, okay, here are the people I want to meet? How did you do that? Because, I mean, it was like watching smoke. I mean, it was like unbelievable magic, and you're like, what happened to those 7 years? And look at you.
It went so fast, right? When I would go to events, I was very strategic. I would always look around the room, just like I'm doing right now, and I would see who the star in the room is. There's always a star in the room. There's always someone who has magic. And that's the person who I'm always drawn to. If it's a woman who's empowering other women, if she's encouraging someone, it's something that's very, very minute, but it's big. And she's a star to me. And so I gravitate to that person, and I introduce myself. Hello, how are you? I'm Chantel McWilliams. And most of the time, they had no idea who I was. And they would just be very polite. Hello. And then I'll just start a very authentic conversation. And sometimes you start it with a compliment. Now, some women do not like that, right? So you have to read your audience. If you say, oh, you look so nice today, that's not really a draw for some people. So you really have to read the energy and the mindset of that person. But typically I would go in a room and I would look for the star in the room, and then I would ask to be introduced to someone who knew someone mutual. And so from that, I would get their information and I would call them, as Susan knows. And I will call you a lot until you answer the phone. And eventually you'll want to have coffee with me. And I built the relationship on a very authentic level. It was very slow growth. It was.
So I'd like to add to that. So Chantel, we are not alike in that way. I I do identify the stars in the room, but I'm not one to just come up and start a conversation. I will say, I might say hi if the timing is right. But the way that I approach it, coming into a room, is talking to people, making sure that the conversations are authentic, and then I'm a helper. I love pleasing people, and I love connecting people. So identifying what their needs are and who I can connect them with.
Matt, I think you have something, because you've done some things in different ways and through organizations and things of that nature to get out there.
Well, one thing I would add is that a fellow told me something a number of years ago that at the time I didn't appreciate, but I've really come to. He said, you worry a lot less about what people think about you if you realize how infrequently they think about you. I mean, most people think about themselves all day long. They're not thinking about you. So, and I'll tell you an embarrassing story. I was with the head of the agency at one of our biggest clients in Washington, and we just come from lunch, we're walking down the street, and out of nowhere he said, you know, I think you're a reasonably smart guy, but I'd like you a whole lot better if you weren't so concerned about being right all the time. Yes. So I thought about it and realized that in a lot of ways I'm somewhat introspective, but in a meeting it's fairly easy for me to stand up and say, here's what I think we should do, and try and lead the discussion. And I realized that what I was doing was driving towards my answer, not the best answer. And that was a bad brand to have. And I think that I've worked the past 10, 12 years to overcome that. I hope so. I'll defer to your suggestions. The other thing that I would mention is that the most effective form of advertising, does anybody know what the most efficient, effective form of advertising is?
Human-to-human referral.
Word of mouth, right? It's what people, when you're looking for a reference or a referral or something, especially if you're starting a business, you always start it, is an old term, from your Rolodex. No.
What's that?
Sorry. So if word of mouth is so effective and efficient, how do you generate word of mouth? Is by being interested in other people. Chantel was talking about walking into a room looking for the star. Most of us walk into a room and look for the people we know. And you walk over to them and you talk to the same people every time. You go to a luncheon and you realize, I didn't meet anybody new, I talked to the same people I talked to last time, and they were also probably trying to sell something. So, and my wife is very shy, which is probably not surprising. And I've talked to her about this because she's in the education field and she needs to work with parents. And I said the easiest thing in the world to get someone talking about is themselves. You say, hi, who are you? What do you do? Oh, how did you get into the line of work? Everybody has a story about it. Their father, their relative, college, whatever. But that is the best way to get people talking. And if they think you're interested in them, they're interested in you. There's a line that says, if you want to be interesting, be interested. And I think that's the best advice I'd give you, and it pairs with getting involved in organizations to be a part of other people's conversations that they're having all day long about themselves.
Well, and every one of you are part of different organizations, and if you think about why you got involved with them and the strategy behind it, well, I'd like to talk about that, and then going on to talk about how we partner with other people to help us. You know, like I mentioned Susan Dyson earlier helping us, and then for years I had a best friend here in town, and we would actually call each other and meet and strategize, and it would be like she would help me in a group, and then I would help her in a group, and I was at a meeting here, and I said, have you met them, and bring them over to meet people, and I'm sure all of you do that. Do you guys have similar strategies when you're reaching out? Who on the panel has a strategy like that where you partner with other people?
So definitely. You can't do it on your own, and we've seen a lot of success with the networking and getting to know other people and getting help, listening help like from Susan to reach success. So I'm gonna go back to the branding piece again. Once you decide what your brand is, or what you want your brand to be, you can use that as a framework. There are a million organizations out there. If you wanted to go to a networking event, morning, noon, and night, 7 days a week in Houston, sometimes 2 at night, you could, right? And then on top of that, you have your own work to do. So how do you decide what to really push all in? What organization to do, to participate in? Like Matt said, if you participate in an organization, you really should push in and really be involved in the organization. That's when you're going to get the most out of it. So once you decide what your brand is, then you have a bar, right? Does it align with what your brand, what you want your brand to be? And that's how you can decide what to participate in, what not to participate in.
Thank you. Now, Chantel, when you were doing all the stargazing and the audience picking out your person and all of that, don't you all wonder if you're the stars yourself? I know, that's why you came up to me that time. You thought I was a star. So when you're doing that and you're reaching out and you're trying to decide what you're going to spend time in, okay? Because you had a health issue, you're a married person, so you have a family, you've got 2 companies, that you're dealing with. Share with us how you decided strategically where to spend your time first, how it went in place. It certainly couldn't have been just shoot from the hip, was it?
So as I stated before, when I moved here, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, but it was 2 months after I got married. So I was a newlywed, a new cancer survivor, and new to Houston. So all those factors really played a role in me being very strategic in how I wanted to maneuver in a new city. And who really was the glue for me, and she knows this, is Susan Dyson. I met with her and she said, I wanted to help you. And she wanted to help me for a particular reason, because she saw the passion behind what I wanted to do. And I think so often you have to align yourself with organizations and with people who see the passion in you. There are some people who do not want to utilize your talents and your skills. You need to be around organizations and leaders in those organizations who embrace your skills, who are not threatened by them, but want to embrace them. And when you feel nurtured in your skills and your passion, your brand is being developed. And so you have to figure out, what do I want to be known for? When I walk into the room, what do I want people to say about me? And sometimes you have to rebrand yourself. I know as I maneuvered through Houston, I got very philanthropic. I've raised over $2 million for different charities in Houston. So what happened, people began to see me as a quote-unquote socialite. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why am I considered a socialite? Because I'm philanthropic. I have 3 degrees and I run companies, and I'm more than just a person who takes pictures at events. So I began to realize that I needed to rebrand what that meant, because people don't see the philanthropic side. They see the picture in the paper, or they see the honor. So immediately I said, well, Susan, and she said, why don't you start a company? Susan and I was going to start a company. So that's a great idea. So I started a company, SM Global Consulting, where I help individuals with their philanthropic brand and their causes. So when a person sees you, they know you have a company or you work for a corporation, but they also know what your passion is in this community. What are you behind? Are you behind women empowerment? Are you behind advocacy? Are you behind health issues? What is your passion? So you have to have a passion aligned with your business and with your corporate image. And so I had to rebrand myself, and still in the process of doing that, because I didn't like how I was being branded for the efforts that I was doing. So sometimes you think you're doing something fantastic, and then someone just say, oh, she's just a socialite. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not what I am. Nothing's wrong with a socialite, but I did not want to be branded that way. So it's very important to kind of hear what people are saying and take it as critical advice to rebrand yourself.
Thank you. And then I think Ami has a tool for that we'll get to, where you figure out what people are really saying about you, because you know, if you don't take control of that, people are gonna make it about what they wanna make it about. So that and Ami, when I have talked to a lot of people this morning that are in transition, they have law degrees, or several people have law degrees that are starting other companies, and there's a lot of people like me that are transitioned and they refuse the word retirement, they're transitioning into something else. And so what is it that you advise your clients on when they're doing it through a company? I know, Matt, you said that you had done that through a company. Ami, you've worked for corporations as well. So how is that different than the personal brand, or are they the same?
So I really don't know if it's really that much different. So I moved here at 32 and kind of did a career change. I moved here from Atlanta, didn't know anybody, and so I went to the American Marketing Association, and I figured, you know, I'm in marketing, I'm doing marketing, so let's go to the American Marketing Association. When I got there, I met a man who connected me with other people, and I ended up getting a job through that person, and I felt like that was so cool that somebody would do that for me, and so I think that, you know, it's really not that much different when you are with the company. You still would want to reach out to people within your company and network in your company and have this personal brand, and help people as much as you can.
Okay, Matt?
Well, I'd say when you're with a company, and I had worked with a number of large agencies, that you're bound by their rules and their policies and procedures, what organizations they support, and if there are any considerations in the community. When I left Ogilvy Mather to start my own firm, I had to start making up the rules. And at the risk of being the Susan fan club up here, I think one of the things that Susan in the chamber epitomizes is the concept of paying it forward. Before you ask someone to do it for you, do something for them. I mean, it's like a bank account. We tell our clients, you build up a bank of goodwill so that when a problem happens, which it always does, that you have a bank account to draw down from. If you don't have anything in the bank, then you go into a negative situation. I mean, I represent 3 magazines here in Houston, the Symphony Magazine, the Opera Magazine, and Art Houston. And we, every once in a while, will have a problem where we ran the wrong ad, they sent us the wrong ad, something happened in the publication. But because we have worked really hard to build relationships with advertisers, with tickets, with doing them favors, with giving them extra positioning without an extra charge, they tend to forget the problem, and they overlook it because we have a relationship. And it seems to me when you're building a brand, the thing to work on is the relationship with the people that you want to know your brand. If you treat it like a transaction, that everything has to be an even give and take, then there is no relationship and it easily breaks.
It was something that I lived by a lot of years ago when it was brand new. And it was in the Fast Company magazine when it was Fast Company magazine early on. And there was a mention of the real question becomes, how is the brand you doing? Put together your own users group, the personal brand you equivalent of a software review group. And what you can do is tell them that you will not unfriend them if they're honest with you, etc. Or if you do that Facebook thing where they, you know, you post what they look like when you're my age, that kind of thing. I don't have to do that because I already know what I'm going to be. But I'm just saying that that is one way to do it. And then Hami has an exercise, I believe, don't you, that you use about personal branding?
Yeah. So we keep on talking about you know, defining a personal brand, what that is, and so I'll share with you what my personal brand is. So usually you would want to condense it down to 3 words. So mine is tenacious, driven, and intentional. Those are the 3 words that I live by. I would like to project in all of my interactions with people. And so how do I know that that's actually what people are thinking of me, right? So one way you can test this is get a third party and have your best friend, reach out to 20 to 30 of your contacts. And ask those people, and it has to be third party, and you can't see the answers to this, but ask those people, what are the 3 words they think of when they think of you? And then your friend takes those words and only gives you 5 back. And then you compare it to your list, and then you can see, are you really being intentional? Are you really being driven? Are you really projecting that you're tenacious? So that's one way. And then once you get it back, you might be surprised. But then you have something to work towards, right? Then you have a benchmark so you can work towards it.
Yeah, I like that, because what you think you are and what others think you are, the gap, you want to be sure that's not too large, for sure.
Also, tell your friend not to give you the worst ones, because it's really disheartening.
It's like a great human resource. I know there's some human resource people in the room. It's like getting, I guess, a COM 360 reviews, or is it one, I can never remember what they call that. So that's a good deal. Any other tools that you want to share?